observed my friend's behavior and perceived his most surprising partiality.
Your sister I also watched.
And though her manners were open and engaging, there was no symptom of warm regard or sentiment. She received his attentions but remained, to my eye, indifferent.
My objections to the marriage proceeded also from other causes of repugnance. Your family's want of propriety, betrayed by your mother's forwardness, your sister's manners, and, even forgive me, your father's misplaced wit, all confirmed my sense
that I must preserve my friend from a most unhappy connection.
In London, I found his sister's uneasiness, and we were alike insensible that
Bingley has great natural modesty, with a stronger dependence on my judgment than on his own.
To convince him he had deceived himself was not difficult. On this subject, I have nothing more to add and no apology to offer. On that other, more weighty accusation of having injured Mr. Wickham, that I will have to attempt to refute.
In short, his behavior to me has been scandalous.
My father was not only fond of this young man's society, but hoped the church would be his profession.
And intended to provide for him in it. He would situate him at the family parsonage and provide him with a legacy of £1,000. On my father's death, Mr. Wickham wrote to inform me that
I have resolved not to pursue a church living, but to study law, for which the £1,000 would be insufficient. I hope it will not be unreasonable of me to expect more immediate pecuniary advantage.
The business was soon settled. He resigned all claim to assistance in the church
and gained in return £3,000. 3 years later, he applied to me again, having found the law an unprofitable study, and then again reason to be ordained.
This must be false. This cannot be. He assured me his circumstances were
exceedingly bad.
Indeed, on both sides this is only an assertion, and yet every line confuses my belief in Mr. Darcy's infamy.
You will hardly blame me for refusing his entreaty, and his resentment was so great that
you betray your father's wishes and your own honor, sir.
All appearance of acquaintance was dropped.
Last summer he again, most painfully, obtruded on my notice. My sister Georgiana, for whom Mr. Fitzwilliam and myself were mutual guardians, was taken from school at her wish and established in London. Mr. Wickham, by connivance, recommended himself to her.
Ah, Miss Darcy, it is my pleasure to renew your acquaintance.
She was then but 15, and persuaded herself to be in love, and consented to an elopement.
Fortunately, regarding me as almost a second father, she confessed her plans.
You may imagine what I felt, and how I acted.
I wrote to Mr. Wickham in undisguised heat, and he left London immediately, and alone. His desire had unquestionably been my sister's fortune of £30,000, and the hope, I think, of revenging himself upon me.
In this light, Mr. Wickham's attentions to that Miss King seem now the consequence of views solely and hatefully mercenary.
This, madam, is a faithful narrative of every event described above. If your abhorrence of me should make my assertions valueless, I direct you to Colonel Fitzwilliam, also guardian of Georgiana, who is fully aware of every particular described above. I will only add, God bless you.
How humiliating is this discovery, yet just a humiliation. Had I been in love, I could not have been more wretchedly blind. But vanity, not love, has been my folly. As to the mention of my family, in terms so mortifying, my sense of shame is severe. But the charge strikes too forcibly for denial. Their defects, I fear, seem hopeless of remedy. My mother puts herself forward beyond all expectation. while my father does nothing to restrain the uncontrollable giddiness and self-willed carelessness of my younger sisters. Only excepting dear Jane, what can I call them all but ignorant, idle, and vain? How despicably
I'm glad you are back, Lizzie. Have you had any flirting? I was in great hopes that you would have got a husband by the time you got back.
Our sisters have been more than ordinarily silly.
Oh, pooh. Aunt Phillips says Lizzie had better take in Mr. Collins, but I do not think there would have been any fun in it. Jane will be quite an old maid soon. Lord, how should I like to be married before any of you? Then I shall be able to chaperone you about to all the balls. Kitty and I have been to the shops.
I do wish you had gone along with us, Mary, for we had such fun. We talked and laughed so loud that anyone might have heard us 10 miles off.
Far be it from me, dear sister, to appreciate such pleasures, but I confess they would have no charms for me. I should infinitely prefer a book.
Look here, I have bought this bonnet. I do not think it is very pretty, but I thought I might as well buy it as not.
You see...
Oh, but there were 2 or 3 much uglier in the shop. And once I have found some prettier satin to trim it with fresh, I think it will be very tolerable.
Sister, I am heartily sorry that Mr. Darcy should have delivered his sentiments in a manner so little suited to recommend them. But I grieve for the unhappiness your refusal must have given him.
You do not blame me, however, for refusing him?
Blame you? Oh, no. But Mr. Wickham, so very bad. It is almost past belief. How unfortunate that you should have used such strong expressions when speaking of Wickham to Mr. Darcy. For now they do deserved.
Well, Lizzie, what is your opinion now of this business of Jane's?
My belief.
He is a very undeserving young man, and I do not believe she shall ever get him now.
Mother.
Well, my comfort is, I'm sure Jane will die of a broken heart, and then he will be sorry for what he has done. News! Ecstatic! Delicious! Wonderful! News!
Hearing the regiment will leave for Brighton.
I thought my heart would have broken. My heart? Mine. But oh, Mama, I have received an invitation from Mrs. Foster, wife of the colonel of the regiment, to accompany her to
Brighton.
To Brighton!
And I cannot see why I shall not be asked as well. Shall?
You confuse your steps to the dance espagnole, and you've but one dress for the new season, and that an unsuitable green.
Lydia will never be easy till she is exposed to qualities in some public place or other, and we can never expect her to do it with such little expense or inconvenience to her family as under the present circumstances.
Oh, Papa!
Were you aware of the very great disadvantage to us all which must arise from the public notice of Lydia's unguarded and imprudent manner, nay, which has already arisen from it?
What? Has she frightened away some of your lovers?
I have no such injuries to resent, but, dear father, if there is no check to her exuberant spirits, she will soon be beyond the reach of amendment.
Oh, Pooh!
Yes, Pooh.
And Kitty will follow wherever Lydia leads.
Papa has said I may. Indeed, a visit to Brighton compromises every possibility of earthly happiness.
Where you may play the common flirt with at least 6 different officers at once.
I tell you all, I shan't dine or ever leave my room if...
We shall have no peace at Longbourn if Lydia does not go to Brighton.
Mr. Wickham has arrived to say his goodbyes.
Oh, but Mr. Wickham, I will not say my goodbyes, for Papa has said I may accept an invitation for an extended visit.
It will be my pleasure, if asked, to introduce you in Brighton and share with you the town's historical views. Miss Bennet.
Mr. Wickham.
Am I in disgrace, Miss Bennet?
I do not rightly understand you.
I've always admired your understanding.
Have I mentioned I met Colonel Fitzwilliam and Mr. Darcy at Rosings?
In passing, you saw Mr. Darcy frequently?
Yes, almost every day. I believe Mr. Darcy improves on acquaintance.
Indeed, I hope it is in address he improves, for I dare not hope he has improved in essentials.
I mean that, from knowing him better, his disposition was better understood.
I must rejoice that he is wise enough to assume even the appearance of what is right, for it must deter him from such foul misconduct as I have suffered by. But I fear I must leave you. We are on the march. A last word on Mr. Darcy. His manner being in a state of improvement may be imputed to his wish of affording with the new affability, a match with the daughter of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. A match long contemplated by both families as a boon to the growth of their estates and the continuance of their honorable lines. Goodbye, Miss Bennet. I fear we may not meet again. I wish you good fortune in whichever way your inclinations may lie.
The departure of the regiment, including many acquaintances, wrapped a cloak of gloom and disinclination around our domestic circle.
Lydia has promised to write very often, but her letters are always very short.
Where such and such officers had attended them.
And where she sees his beautiful ornaments make her quite wild.
And how she had purchased another new gown and another new parasol.
And my constant hope of a tour to the lakes with the gardeners was now the object of my happiest thoughts.
My dear Elizabeth, our plans, due to Mr. Gardner's business, must be somewhat curtailed in extent. We must give up the lakes and substitute a more contracted tour. Had you set your heart on seeing the lakes?
Well, I own they were an attraction.
I fear we are contained to Derbyshire, though it leaves us the delights of Warwick, Kenilworth, Lambton, and of course, Pemberley.
Oh, Pemberley.
The Darcy estate.
Yes, I recall.
If it were merely a fine house richly furnished, I should not care for it myself, but the grounds are delightful.
The grounds, yes. But is not the family down for the summer?
Indeed not, you goose, for they summer always in London. Elizabeth?
The journey was, for scenery, splendid. And when we turned in at the lodge, we saw that Pemberley Park was large.
Contains quite a variety of grounds.
Glorious woods.
Eh?
Woods!
Good stream for fishing.
The house sits well on rising ground. Yes. I own I have never seen such natural beauty, so little contradicted by an awkward taste. Can you put the letters on?
It's a glorious day, too, the sunlight streaming on the water. Ah, it is a shame that the family is not home.
You are very welcome. The master is, of course, absent, but we expect him tomorrow with a large party of friends. We're instructed always to show the house, if you would like.
Most kind indeed.
Your master much at Pemberley, is he?
Not so much as I could wish, sir.
Have a look at the stream, eh?
Please, do step in. That above the grand fireplace would be my master, drawn perhaps 8 years ago.
A handsome face. But, Lizzie, you can tell us whether it is like or not.
Does the young lady know Mr. Darcy?
I do.
And do you not think him a very handsome gentleman, ma'am?
Yes, very handsome.
He is the best master as have ever lived. I have never heard a cross word from him in my life.
Mr. Darcy, you mean?
Yes, ma'am. Go as you please. See what you like.
In what an amiable light does this place him, though not quite consistent with his behavior to our poor friend.
It is possible that we have been deceived. Perhaps, Aunt, we may view the grounds?
Ah, with the greatest pleasure. Indeed, the landscape, the lawn, the river, all in harmony with the buildings. I am quite swept away.
Oh! Miss Bennet, what a surprise!
Yes, a most welcome surprise.
May I ask of your health and that of your families?
In all regards, well.
I'm very pleased to hear so. Would you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends?
Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, may I present Mr. Darcy?
Charmed.
Delighted.
My aunt and uncle.
Of course, that only adds to the honor.
Wonderful stream, Mr. Darcy. Capital angling, I suspect.
Quite satisfactory, Mr. Gardner. Should you continue in the neighborhood, I invite you to fish here as often as you choose. I can easily provide requisite tackle and direct you to those parts of the stream where there is usually most sport.
Eh?
Best sport.
Very generous, sir. I look forward to it.
Very generous indeed.
Please exempt our forwardness in walking the grounds.
Your housekeeper informed us you would certainly not be here until tomorrow.
I have preceded my party to arrange for their comfort. Among them are some who will claim acquaintance to you. Mr. Bingley and his sister, and one who more particularly wishes to be known to you. Would you do me the honor, or do I ask too much, to introduce you to my sister during your stay at Lambton?
I am delighted by this compliment.
Ah.
Yes.
Great pleasure.
Perfectly well behaved, polite, and unassuming.
There is something a little aloof in him. To be sure, Lizzie, he is not handsome, but his features are perfectly good. How came you to tell us he was so disagreeable?
Well...
Disagreeable?
Indeed not. There was a little whimsical in his abilities.
My dearest daughter, the meetings and introductions suggested by Mr. Darcy took place 2 days following and excited my lively attention. I had conceived, you might say, a suspicion of Mr. Darcy and my niece that on that occasion grew to a full conviction that one of them, at least, knew what it was to love. Of Lizzie's sensations I remained a little in doubt, but that the gentleman was overflowing with admiration was evident enough.
Thus, dearest Jane, in speaking of your supposed rival, Miss Darcy, I saw no looks between her and Mr. Bingley that spoke of particular regard. He also asked me with great interest if all my sisters were still at Longbourn, which I took to be an inquiry as to your married state. Miss Bingley continues in her dislike of me. Georgiana Darcy was greatly civil, but very shy.
Something come for you, miss.
Oh?
Thought you might be wanting it.
News from Jane, and very welcome.
Brought it to you then.
My dearest Lizzie, something has occurred of a most serious and unexpected nature.
Colonel Forster informed us that Lydia has run off to Scotland with one of his officers. To own the truth, Lizzie, it is with Wickham.
Worse still,
imprudent as a marriage between Lydia and Wickham may be.
We are now frantic to be assured it has happened at all, for we now hear they have not gone to Scotland, but to London.
And there is reason to believe
that he never intended to marry Lydia at all.
And Colonel Forster
fears Wickham is not a man to be trusted.
Father has gone to London with Colonel Forster to try to discover her. And what he means to do, I know not.
He shall shoot the scoundrel through the heart, and we shall all be ruined.
Adieu. I cannot help earnest begging you to come as soon as possible.
Oh, where is my aunt? I must find her this moment on business that cannot be delayed.
Good God! What is the matter?
I have not an instant to lose.
You cannot go alone. A servant. I will send a servant with you. A glass of wine. Shall I get you one?
No. No.
You are very ill?
No, I thank you. Only dreadful news. My sister has left all her friends, has eloped under the power of Mr. Wickham. You know him too well to doubt the rest. She's lost forever.
I'm shocked, grieved, but is it absolutely certain?
Certain. My father has gone to London, and I'm sure Mr. Gardiner will assist. But how is such a man to be worked on? How are they even to be discovered?
If there is anything.
Most kind, but...
If heaven that anything could be done on my part, that I might offer consolation for such distress.
We must go at once. Pray apologize for us to Miss Darcy.
Dear me, your company seems to have fled the grounds in disarray.
Your pardon?
How very ill Eliza Bennet looked this morning, Mr. Darcy. I never in my life have seen someone so much altered as she since the winter. She's grown so brown and hoarse.
It is perhaps no miraculous consequence of traveling during the summer.
I particularly recollect you saying one night, she a beauty. I should as soon call her mother a wit. But then I believe she began to improve on you. You thought her rather pretty at one time?
Yes, but that was only when I first knew her. For now, I consider her the handsomest woman of my acquaintance.
I had never perceived while the regiment was in Hertfordshire that Lydia had any partiality for Wickham. But she only wanted the encouragement to attach herself to anybody. The mischief of mistaken neglect and indulgence towards such a girl. A family so deranged, a father absent, a mother incapable of exertion. And it is all my fault that knowing what I did at Wickham, that I had not the foresight to make that knowledge public. Has anything been heard of the fugitives?
Not yet. But now that my dear uncle has come, I hope all will be well.
Is father in London?
Yes, he went on Tuesday.
If I had been able to carry my point in going to London with all the family, this would have never happened.
Mother.
Why did the Forsters let her out of their sight? And now Mr. Bennet will fight Wickham wherever he meets him. I do not know what we shall do.
Yeah?
Not know what we shall do.
Do not give way to useless alarm. I shall go to London, call your brother, and consult together what is to be done.
This is a most unfortunate affair, but we must stem the tide of malice and pour into the wounded bosoms of each other the balm of sisterly consolation.
You see, Mary thinks it's all a book.
Lydia wrote saying if we knew where she was going.
You would laugh. What a good joke it will be when I write to Mama and sign my name, Lydia Wickham. I hope he will drink to our good journey.
Thoughtless, thoughtless Lydia! But at least it shows she was serious in the object of her journey. Whatever he might afterwards persuade her to, it was not, at least on her side, a scheme of infamy. My poor father, how he must have felt!
I've never seen anyone so shocked. He could not speak a word.
Mr. Bennet shocked. I was taken ill immediately. I had to be carried to my room twice.
Oh, Jane.
Father.
Mr. Bennet.
Oh, my father, what you must have endured.
It has been my own doing, and I ought to feel it.
You must not be too severe upon yourself.
No, Lizzie. Let me once in my life feel how much I have been to blame. Or perhaps I will defer it till Kitty runs away.
I'm not going to run away, Papa. If I should ever go to Brighton, I would behave far better than Lydia.
Do you suppose them to be in London?
Yes. Where else can they be so well concealed?